Hello there and welcome. Find a comfortable spot, let your shoulders relax, and just breathe. Tonight, we're going to wander back in time, not with the dry rustle of a history book, but with the quiet wonder of a story told by starlight. We're going to talk about a few moments when the curtain between heaven and earth seemed to get impossibly thin. Moments when God didn't just whisper, but showed up in a way that left everyone speechless, holding the microphone he'd just dropped. These are the stories that have been told and retold around campfires and at bedsides for thousands of years. And tonight, it's your turn to hear one. Our first story is a big one. It involves an entire nation on the run, a furious king with an army at his heels, and a very, very large body of water that had no intention of moving. It's the story of the Great Escape, the ultimate get-out-of-jail-free card, played on a stage of sand and sea. So, close your eyes if you wish, and let's travel back. Let's go to the edge of the Red Sea. Picture the scene. It's chaos. Not the triumphant, flag-waving parade you might imagine, but a messy, sprawling, dusty exodus. Several million people, men, women, children, and a motley crew of others who decided to throw their lot in with them, are trudging away from Egypt. For 430 years, they had been in this land. For a huge chunk of that time, they had been slaves. Their hands were calloused from making bricks without straw. Their backs were scarred from the taskmaster's whip, and their spirits were nearly crushed under the weight of a hopeless future. And then came Moses, a man who grew up a prince but was now a shepherd, sent back by God with a simple, terrifying message for the most powerful man in the world, the Pharaoh. Let my people go. What followed was a divine arm-wrestling match of epic proportions. 10 plagues, each one a direct challenge to an Egyptian god, each one more devastating than the last. Frogs in the royal beds, rivers of blood, darkness so thick you could feel it. And finally, the 10th plague, the most terrible of all, the death of the firstborn. It was a night of anguish and terror in every Egyptian home, from the palace to the hovel. But in the homes of the Israelites, marked with the blood of a lamb on the doorposts, the angel of death passed over. That was the breaking point. A grief-stricken and defeated Pharaoh didn't just let them go. He practically begged them to leave. "Go, serve the Lord as you have requested," he said, his voice raw with loss. "Take your flocks and herds and go. And also bless me." The final plea of a broken man who had just seen a power far greater than his own. So they left. In a flurry of activity, they packed what they could unleavened dough on their backs, because there wasn't even time to let it rise. They took their livestock, their children, and the treasures their Egyptian neighbors, terrified of their God, had given them just to speed their departure. The first taste of freedom must have been intoxicating. The first steps taken not as a slave, but as a free person. The air itself must have smelled different. Now, a few days into the journey, the initial euphoria is starting to curdle into something else. The reality of their situation is setting in. Imagine a city the size of Philadelphia or Houston suddenly being uprooted and told to walk into the desert. There are no roads, no supply chains, no hotels. There's just sand, rock, and the relentless sun. The logistics are a nightmare. Old men are struggling to keep up. Pregnant women are trying to find a comfortable spot on a lurching ox cart. Children are crying, tired and thirsty. The bleating of thousands upon thousands of sheep and goats is a constant, maddening soundtrack. And the question, whispered at first, is getting louder and louder. What now? They are not entirely without a guide, of course. And their guide is perhaps the most incredible part of the whole scene. By day, God leads them as a massive, towering pillar of cloud. Think about that for a moment. Not just a fluffy white cloud in the sky, but a column, a divine structure that moves ahead of them. It provides a constant, blessed shade from the brutal desert sun, a moving canopy of grace. It's their GPS, their compass, their divine sunblock. You would always know where to go. You just had to look up and follow the cloud. And at night, that same pillar transforms. It becomes a pillar of fire, a colossal, burning torch that illuminates the entire camp, warding off the deep, dark cold of the desert night and keeping predators at bay. It's a constant, visible reminder that they are not alone. God is with them, leading them, protecting them. It's a sight of both immense comfort and terrifying power. Imagine being a child in that camp, peeking out of your tent flap at night and seeing that silent, blazing column touching the stars. You would feel very, very small, but also incredibly safe. Their leader on the ground is Moses. He's 80 years old now. He has the weathered face of a man who has spent 40 years in the wilderness tending sheep, and the weary eyes of a man who has spent the last few weeks going toe-to-toe with a king and a pantheon of angry gods. He is not a natural-born leader in the charismatic sense. The Bible tells us he was slow of speech and tongue, which might mean he had a stutter or was just not a gifted orator. He's leaning heavily on his brother, Aaron, to be his spokesman. But what Moses has is a direct line to God. He listens and he obeys, even when the instructions make no earthly sense. And the latest instruction is a real head-scratcher. God tells him, "Tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi-hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea." They are to encamp by the sea, directly opposite Baal-zephon. Let's pause on that. Turn back. They are supposed to make a U-turn and head towards the sea, into a geographical cul-de-sac. On one side, the impassable mountains of the desert. In front of them, the vast expanse of the Red Sea. They are intentionally walking into a trap. You can almost hear the grumbling erupt through the camp. Let's imagine a family, huddled around their small fire as the pillar of fire glows above them. Let's call the father Eleazar. He's a practical man, a bricklayer by trade. His wife is Shira, and they have 2 children, a young boy named Caleb, full of wonder, and a teenage daughter, Tamar, who is already tired of the whole adventure. "Turn back," Eleazar says, rubbing his temples. "Did you hear what the elders were saying? Moses wants us to turn back towards the sea. The man has led us into a box canyon. A clever goat would know better." Shira, ever the calming influence, stirs a small pot of something reconstituted. The Lord is leading us, my husband. The cloud has turned. We follow the cloud. The cloud, Tamar mutters, poking the fire with a stick. It's hot, it's dusty, and my feet feel like two bruised stones. In Egypt, at least we had a roof. We had cucumbers and melons and leeks and onions and garlic. She recites the list like a bitter poem. Here, we have sand in our bread and Moses's strange ideas. Hush, daughter, Elazar says, though he doesn't sound entirely convinced himself. It is freedom. What good is freedom if we're all going to starve or die of thirst in this wasteland? She snaps back. Little Caleb, however, is captivated. But Papa, he says, his eyes wide, did you see the big cloud today? It was like a giant's finger pointing the way. And at night, the fire is so warm. It's like the moon came down to keep us safe. This is the state of the nation of Israel. A mix of doubt, fear, exhaustion, and a childlike faith, all bundled together, following a pillar of fire into what looks like a dead end. Moses walks through the camp, his face a mask of serenity he probably doesn't feel. He hears the whispers. He sees the fearful glances. He knows this looks like strategic madness, but he has his orders. He trusts the one who gave them. The stress must be immense. He's not just a general. He's a pastor to a congregation of millions of traumatized, complaining, and terrified people. Meanwhile, back in Egypt, the mood has shifted. The initial shock and grief of the 10th plague are beginning to fade, replaced by a cold, hard economic reality and a burning desire for revenge. Pharaoh is sitting in his throne room. The air is still thick with the scent of funeral incense. His counselors and military commanders are gathered around him. My Lord Pharaoh, life of the two lands, may he live forever. One of his generals begins, bowing low. Have you considered what we have done? We have lost our entire slave labor force. Who will build the new temples? Who will quarry the stone for the great monuments? Who will make the bricks? The economy of Egypt, the might of our empire, was built on the backs of these Hebrews. We have let our wealth just walk away into the desert. Another advisor chimes in, his voice slick with cunning. And think of the optics, divine one. They defied you. They and their God humiliated the gods of Egypt. Our enemies in Nubia and among the Hittites will hear of this. They will see it as a sign of weakness. They will say that Pharaoh's power has waned. We must restore our honor. We must show the world that no one defies Egypt and lives to boast of it. Pharaoh's heart, which the Bible says God had hardened, needed little convincing. His personal grief has curdled into a white-hot rage. His son is dead. His nation is in chaos. His divine authority has been publicly mocked. The idea of the Israelites being free and prosperous is an insult he cannot stomach. Prepare the chariots, he commands, his voice dangerously quiet. All of them. I want the best of the best. 600 of our elite chariots and all the other chariots of Egypt, with officers over all of them. A stir of excitement and bloodlust goes through the room. This will be a swift and brutal campaign. The Israelites are on foot, burdened with women, children, and livestock. They are not warriors, they are slaves. The Egyptian army is the most formidable fighting machine in the world. Their chariots are the ancient equivalent of tanks, fast, deadly platforms for archers and spearmen. This won't be a battle, it will be a slaughter, a message to the world. So the great army of Egypt is mustered. The sound of war horns echoes through the Nile Valley. The rattle of harnesses and the thunder of thousands of horses' hooves fill the air. Pharaoh himself, in his golden chariot, leads the charge. He is not just sending his army, he is personally going to oversee the subjugation of these escaped slaves. He is going to drag them back in chains and erase this embarrassing chapter from his history. Back at the Israelite camp by the sea, the trap is now fully set. They have nowhere to run. They are hemmed in. It is in this moment of extreme vulnerability that the first sign of trouble appears. A scout posted on a high rock squints at the horizon. He sees a smudge of dust, a smudge that is growing, widening, rising into the sky like a coming sandstorm. But it's not a sandstorm. It's moving too fast, too purposefully. He scrambles down the rock, his face pale with terror. They're coming, he screams, running into the camp. Egyptians, an army, chariots. The word spreads like wildfire. Panic, raw and primal, erupts. The low grumbling turns into a full-throated roar of terror and accusation. The people surround Moses and Aaron, their faces contorted with fear and anger. All their worst fears are coming true. They had escaped, only to be cornered and slaughtered. Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? A man shrieks, his voice cracking with hysteria. What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. The irony is thick and bitter. They are romanticizing their slavery. The memory of the lash, the backbreaking labor, the stolen children, it's all erased by the immediate, overwhelming fear of the approaching army. They see the dust cloud now, can hear the faint, terrifying rumble of thousands of wheels and hooves. It's the sound of their impending doom. This is the crucible for Moses. Millions of people are screaming at him, blaming him for leading them to their deaths. An unstoppable army is bearing down on them. A vast sea is at their back. From a human perspective, it is utterly, completely hopeless. There is no way out. And in this moment, with the fate of his people on his shoulders, Moses becomes the leader God has been forging him to be. He doesn't panic. He doesn't argue. He raises his hands for silence, and his voice, empowered by a faith that defies all logic, cuts through the chaos. Do not be afraid, he says. Imagine the authority in that voice. It's not a suggestion, it's a command. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. What a promise. He's not just offering hope for survival, he's promising total and final victory. And then comes the mic drop line. the one that has echoed through millennia. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Be still in the face of a charging chariot army, in the midst of mass panic, with nowhere to run. Be still. It's the most counterintuitive command imaginable. It's a call to cease all human effort, to stop striving and panicking, and to put every ounce of trust in a power they cannot see, but that Moses knows is there. And then, as if on cue, something extraordinary happens. The pillar of cloud, which has been leading them from the front, lifts up and moves. It travels over the sprawling, terrified camp and places itself behind them, settling right between the Israelites and the oncoming Egyptian army. From the Israelite perspective, this is a divine shield. A wall of cloud has just descended, hiding them from their pursuers. A wave of relief, fragile but real, must have washed over the people closest to the front. They can no longer see the terrifying dust cloud, but from the Egyptian perspective, it's something else entirely. As they charge forward, confident in their victory, they are suddenly plunged into a thick, supernatural darkness. The pillar of cloud brings blackness and confusion to them. Chariots veer off course. Horses rear up in fright. The charge grinds to a halt in a chaotic mess. They can hear the Israelites on the other side of this bizarre cloud wall, but they cannot see them, cannot reach them. For the entire night, God holds the most powerful army in the world at bay with a curtain of cloud. Now, with the people shielded and the army stalled, the main event is about to begin. God speaks to Moses. The instruction is simple and powerful. Raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea to divide the water, so that the Israelites can go through the sea on dry ground. Moses walks to the edge of the water. The waves are lapping at the shore. The salty spray is on his face. He is holding a simple wooden shepherd's staff, the same staff that turned into a snake in Pharaoh's court, the same staff that struck the Nile and turned it to blood. It's just a piece of wood, but it has become a conduit for the power of the Almighty. He takes a deep breath, ignores the sound of the stymied Egyptian army behind the cloud, and raises his hand out over the restless sea. And then the wind starts. The Bible says it was a strong east wind. This is such a simple, understated description for what must have been a terrifying and awesome phenomenon. This isn't a gentle breeze. This is a gale, a hurricane-force wind that shrieks and howls with supernatural power. It blows all through the night. It whips the surface of the sea into a frenzy, but it's not just blowing the tops off the waves. It is pushing the water. It is driving the sea back. Imagine the sound. A deafening, relentless roar that drowns out every other noise. The people would have to huddle together, shielding their faces from the flying sand and spray. And as they watch, mesmerized, they see the miracle unfold in slow motion. The waterline begins to recede, not like a low tide, but like a bathtub being drained from the middle. The sea is being literally pushed apart. Slowly, painstakingly, hour by hour, the seabed begins to appear. At first, it's a muddy, dark slash in the water. Then, As the wind continues its powerful work, the ground becomes firmer, and the water doesn't just disappear, it piles up. On the right and on the left, the water forms two immense vertical walls. Stop and try to truly comprehend that image. It's not a gentle slope. It's a wall of liquid held in place by nothing visible. It's churning, it's moving, it's alive. You could see the fish, the kelp, the creatures of the deep swimming behind a transparent, fluid barrier, as if in the world's most terrifying aquarium. The power required to hold back that much water, to suspend trillions of gallons in a liquid wall, is beyond all human comprehension. The sheer pressure would be immense. Yet there it stands, and in between these two terrifying, beautiful walls of water is a path. A wide, dry path of sand and rock, stretching all the way to the distant shore. The wind has not only parted the sea, but it has also dried the ground, making it firm enough for millions of people, their wagons, and their animals to walk on. The pillar of fire illuminates the scene, casting flickering, dancing shadows on the walls of water. The path is lit. The way is clear. Moses turns to the people. Their faces, lit by the divine fire, are a mixture of stark terror and slack-jawed awe. The time for being still is over. The time for walking has come. Forward, Moses commands. The first person to step onto that seabed must have done so with trembling knees. To walk where no human has ever walked, into the very heart of the sea, with walls of water towering hundreds of feet on either side. It's an act of profound faith. But after the first few brave souls take the step, the rest follow. A great, silent procession begins. Imagine the walk. The ground is cool and damp beneath their sandals. The air smells of salt and brine and wet sand, a smell no one has ever smelled before. Above them, the stars are wheeling in the sky. To their right and left are the impossible walls of the sea. They can hear the muffled, deep groan of the water, held back by God's hand. They can see the shadow of a great shark or a whale drift by behind the liquid wall. There's no shouting now. The complaining has died in their throats. There's only a hushed, reverent silence, broken by the shuffling of millions of feet and the quiet weeping of people overwhelmed by the sheer, undeniable reality of the miracle they are walking through. A mother pulls her child closer, pointing not in fear, but in wonder. An old man who had cursed Moses an hour ago now walks with tears streaming down his face, his hands raised in prayer. This is a holy moment, a baptism of an entire nation. The journey takes hours. All night long they walk. The young and the strong help the old and the weak. They are no longer a rabble, they are a people, united by a shared experience of impossible deliverance. They are walking on a highway paved by the hand of God. As the first hint of dawn streaks the eastern sky, the last of the Israelites, the rear guard, steps onto the far shore. They have made it, all of them. They turn back and look. The path is still there. The walls of water are still standing. And now, as the supernatural darkness of the pillar of cloud finally lifts with the coming daylight, The Egyptians see it too. They see the path. They see their escaped slaves on the other side. And Pharaoh, in his pride and rage, makes his final, fatal mistake. He doesn't see a miracle, he sees an opportunity. He sees a causeway. Forward, he roars to his army. They cannot escape us now. Charge. And the great Egyptian army, the 600 elite chariots, and all the rest, thunders down into the seabed in pursuit. They are confident, arrogant. Their horses' hooves pound the dry ground. The wheels of their heavy iron and bronze chariots rumble between the walls of water. They are halfway across, closing the distance. But the seabed, which was firm for the walking Israelites, is not so kind to heavy, wheeled chariots. The Bible says God jammed the wheels of their chariots, making them hard to drive. The ground becomes muddy, boggy. The wheels sink, axles break. The charge descends into chaos. Chariots crash into one another. Horses panic. The Egyptians are stuck, trapped in the very path they thought was their key to victory. A dawning horror spreads through the Egyptian ranks. Let's get away from the Israelites, they cry to one another. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt. The realization comes too late. They are exactly where God wants them to be. On the far shore, standing with his rescued people, Moses receives his final command for this encounter. Stretch out your hand over the sea so that the waters may flow back over the Egyptians and their chariots and horsemen. Once more, Moses raises his hand, holding that simple wooden staff. He stretches it out over the sea, and the walls come down. It's not a gentle return. It is a catastrophic collapse. With a roar that shakes the very foundations of the earth, the two towering walls of water lose their invisible support and crash down into the channel. A wall of water from the right, a wall of water from the left, meeting in the middle with inconceivable force. The Israelites on the shore watch as the entire army of Egypt, the pride of the empire, the chariots, the horses, the mighty warriors, Pharaoh's elite is engulfed, consumed, and utterly destroyed in a single cataclysmic moment. The sea, which had been their salvation, becomes Egypt's grave. Then there is silence, a profound silence, broken only by the sound of the now calm sea lapping gently at the shore. The sun is rising, casting a golden light on the water. The threat is gone, not just defeated, but erased. The Egyptians they saw yesterday, they will truly never see again. The people stand on the shore, dripping wet from the spray, shivering from the cold and the adrenaline. They look at the water. They look at each other. They look at Moses. And the dawning realization of the totality of their deliverance begins to sink in. Fear gives way to relief. Relief gives way to an explosion of pure, unadulterated joy. And then the music starts. Miriam, Moses' older sister, now a prophetess in her own right, grabs a timbrel, a small, ancient tambourine. Her eyes are shining. She begins to dance, and the other women join her, pulling out their own timbrels that they had somehow thought to pack. A spontaneous, joyous parade erupts on the beach. and Miriam sings. Her voice rings out, clear and strong, over the water. It's the first great song of worship in the Bible, a song born of a miracle witnessed firsthand. Sing to the Lord, for he is highly exalted. Both horse and driver he has hurled into the sea. The people pick up the refrain. A million voices join in a chorus of praise and thanksgiving. They sing and dance on the shore of their salvation, a nation of slaves reborn as a nation of free people. Their chains not just broken, but dissolved in the depths of the sea. That, my friends, was a mic drop. God didn't just win a battle, he redefined the meaning of power. He used the very thing that was meant to be their trap, the sea, as the instrument of their salvation and the destruction of their enemies. He showed his people and the world that his strength is made perfect in their weakness, and that sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply stand still and watch him work. And that single event would become the defining story for Israel, the benchmark for all of God's saving acts forever. The story they would tell their children and their children's children when they needed to be reminded of the faithfulness and the mighty, sea-splitting power of their God. Just let that image settle. The quiet morning after the storm, the sound of singing on the beach, the beginning of a new day, a new life. There's a peace that comes after a display of great power, and I hope you can feel a little of that peace now as we let that story rest. That memory, the story of the sea parting, it became Israel's bedrock. It was the story a parent would tell a child who was afraid of the dark. It was the song they would sing when they felt outnumbered. It was the foundational truth. Our God is a God who saves, a God who makes a way where there is no way. But memory, even a memory as potent as that one, can be a leaky vessel. Generations came and went. The people who walked through the sea on dry ground were long gone, their bones resting in the wilderness. The nations settled in the promised land. They built cities, they crowned kings. And slowly, subtly, the memory began to fade. The awe became tradition, the tradition became ritual, and the ritual became, for many, an empty obligation. Centuries pass in the turning of this page. The kingdom of Israel has fractured, split into two. We find ourselves now in the northern kingdom, also called Israel, under the rule of a king named Ahab. And if the nation's memory of God has faded, under Ahab, it's suffering from full-blown amnesia. The land is sick, and the sickness starts at the top. To understand the next great mic drop moment, you first have to understand the silence that preceded it. A terrible, crushing silence from the heavens. For 3.5 years, not a drop of rain has fallen. Not a whisper of dew has kissed the ground in the morning. The sky is a sheet of hot, unforgiving brass. The earth, once flowing with milk and honey, has cracked open like a piece of old pottery. The riverbeds are dusty, winding scars. The olive trees are withered, their leaves brittle and gray. The grapevines are skeletal claws, reaching for a sky that offers no relief. Imagine the smell of the land, dust and decay. Imagine the sounds, the weak, desperate lowing of starving cattle, the wind whistling through dead grass, the groans of the people. Famine is a slow, cruel beast. It hollows out the cheeks of children and plants despair in the hearts of parents. This isn't just an unfortunate dry spell. This is a judgment, a divine statement. And the man who announced it, the man who seemingly turned the key on the heavens, is God's prophet, Elijah. Now, Elijah was not a man of the court. He wasn't polished or diplomatic. The Bible introduces him as Elijah the Tishbite from a rugged, remote region called Gilead. Think of a man carved from the wilderness itself, dressed not in fine linen, but in a garment of hair, with a leather belt cinched around his waist. His words were as rough and direct as the landscape he came from. He had appeared before King Ahab 3.5 years ago, delivered a short, shocking prophecy. As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word. And then vanished. He had become the most wanted man in Israel. King Ahab, you see, was not a good king. He wasn't necessarily a monster of pure evil, but more of a weak, pouting man-child who cared more about his own comforts than the will of God or the well-being of his people. The scripture says he did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. And his chief sin was not just that he tolerated idolatry, he married it. His wife was Jezebel, a name that has become synonymous with wickedness, and for good reason. She was a Phoenician princess, the daughter of the king of Sidon, and she was a zealot. She brought her god Baal with her to Israel and was determined to make his worship the state religion. Baal was the god of storms, of rain, of fertility. In an agricultural society, he was a very attractive deity. It was a transactional religion. You offer sacrifices, you perform the rituals, and Baal sends the rain to make your crops grow. It was a god you could supposedly control, a god who served your needs. Unlike Yahweh, the God of Israel, who demanded exclusive worship, justice, and righteousness, Jezebel was ruthless in her mission. She began a systematic persecution, a state-sponsored purge of the prophets of the Lord, hunting them down and killing them. In their place, she established her own clergy, 450 prophets of Baal, and another 400 prophets of the goddess Asherah, all of whom ate at Jezebel's table, meaning they were on the royal payroll. While the people of Israel starved, these prophets lived in luxury, serving the queen's religious and political agenda. So this is the situation: a land dying of thirst, a weak king obsessed with his own problems, a wicked queen actively trying to stamp out the true faith, and a populace caught in the middle. The Bible describes them as limping between two different opinions. It's a brilliant image. They hadn't completely abandoned God, not yet, but they were hedging their bets. They were trying to be bilingual in their faith. They'd give a nod to Yahweh, the God of their ancestors, but when they desperately needed rain for their crops, they'd slip off to a high place and offer a sacrifice to Baal, just in case. They wanted the covenant blessings of Yahweh and the supposed agricultural benefits of Baal. They were trying to walk on two different paths at once, and as a result, they were limping, going nowhere. Meanwhile, where is Elijah? God has hidden him. First by a brook called Cherith, where he drank from the stream and was fed morning and evening by ravens, who brought him bread and meat. Imagine that. The prophet in isolation, being sustained by unclean birds in a time of famine, a daily, humbling miracle. When the brook finally dried up, God sent him out of Israel entirely, to a town called Zarephath, in the heart of Baal's home turf, Sidon, Jezebel's own country. There he was sustained by a poor Gentile widow, whose jar of flour and jug of oil never ran out for 3 years. God was keeping his prophet alive through the most unlikely of means, preserving him for the right moment. Now the moment has come. In the 3rd year of the drought, the word of the Lord comes to Elijah. Go and present yourself to Ahab, and I will send rain on the land. The time for hiding is over. It's time for a confrontation. Ahab, in his palace, is consumed not with a national plan to feed his starving people, but with a desperate search for grass to keep his horses and mules alive. He even divides the land with his palace administrator, Obadiah, to search for any remaining pasture. You go one way, I'll go another, the king says, effectively making himself the royal stable master while his kingdom crumbles. This Obadiah is an interesting character. He is Ahab's right-hand man, but secretly, he is a devout believer in the Lord. When Jezebel began her murderous purge, Obadiah took 100 prophets of the Lord and hid them in 2 caves, 50 in each, and supplied them with food and water. He's a man living a dangerous double life, serving a wicked king while secretly saving God's servants. As Obadiah is on his search for grass, he suddenly runs into Elijah. After 3 years, the prophet has reappeared. Obadiah falls on his face. Is it really you, my lord Elijah? He asks, stunned. Elijah's reply is blunt. Yes, go tell your master, Elijah is here. Obadiah is terrified. What have I done wrong, he pleads, that you are handing your servant over to Ahab to be killed? As surely as the Lord your God lives, there is not a nation or kingdom where my master has not sent someone to look for you. Ahab has been on a 3-year international manhunt for this man, and now you say, go, tell your master, Elijah is here. Ahab will come, and if the Spirit of the Lord carries you off somewhere else, he'll kill me. I've been your servant since my youth. Elijah reassures him. As the Lord Almighty lives, whom I serve, I will surely present myself to Ahab today. So Obadiah goes and tells Ahab. The king, forgetting all about his precious horses, goes to meet his nemesis. The meeting is crackling with tension. 2 powerful men, representing 2 opposing spiritual forces, face to face in the middle of a parched landscape. Ahab speaks first, his voice dripping with accusation. Is that you, you troubler of Israel? He blames the prophet for the drought. He blames the consequences of the sin on the man who pointed it out. It's a classic move. Shoot the messenger. Elijah doesn't flinch. He stands his ground, a lone figure against the king, and throws the accusation right back. His voice is like flint. I have not made trouble for Israel. You and your father's family have made all this trouble. You have abandoned the Lord's commands and have worshipped the Baals. And then, in that moment, Elijah the prophet becomes Elijah the showman. He sees the opportunity for something more than just a private debate. The people are limping. They are confused. They need to see, not just be told. So he makes a proposition, a challenge so audacious, so public, it's breathtaking. Now summon the people from all over Israel to meet me on Mount Carmel, he commands the king. And bring the 450 prophets of Baal and the 400 prophets of Asherah who eat at Jezebel's table. He is challenging the entire religious establishment of the kingdom. One man against 850, not in a secret meeting, but on a mountain in front of the entire nation. Ahab, weak and indecisive as ever, and perhaps intrigued by the sheer drama of it all, agrees. He sends out the summons. So picture the scene on Mount Carmel. It's a majestic location, a mountain ridge that juts out into the Mediterranean Sea. It was known for being green and fertile, which in this time of drought would make it a poignant, ironic backdrop. From its summit, you can see for miles the sea on one side, the parched valley of Jezreel on the other. Up the slopes of the mountain they come. The 850 prophets of Baal and Asherah would have been a sight to behold. Dressed in their priestly regalia, well fed from the queen's table, they walk with an arrogant swagger. They are the religious superstars of their day. They have the king's favor, the queen's backing, and the devotion of many of the people. This is their home turf. Baal is the god of high places, the god of storms. They are confident. This wild man from the desert stands no chance. Then comes Elijah, a solitary figure. He looks out of place, like a piece of the wilderness that has wandered into civilization. He is weathered, intense, and utterly alone. He has no royal entourage, no priestly robes. He has only his leather belt, his hairy cloak, and the word of God burning in his heart. And then come the people, thousands of them from all over Israel. They are not confident and swaggering. They are thin, their skin is leathery from the sun, their eyes are hollow. They are weary from famine, and now they have made this long trek up the mountain. They come with a mixture of hope, skepticism, and morbid curiosity. They are the audience. They are the jury. They have come to see a show. The stage is set. The actors are in place. Elijah steps forward and addresses the crowd. His first words are not to the king or the prophets, but to the people. He looks out at their hesitant, confused faces, and his voice rings out over the mountaintop. How long will you go on limping between two opinions? He puts his finger directly on the source of their pain, their indecision, their spiritual compromise. He lays out the choice in the starkest possible terms. If the Lord is God, follow him. But if Baal is God, follow him. Choose, you can't have both. Pick a side, today, right now. And the Bible records their response. But the people said nothing. A heavy, guilty, awkward silence hangs in the air. They have no answer. They know he's right. Their silence is their confession. Seeing their paralysis, Elijah turns up the heat. He lays out the rules of the contest. I am the only one of the Lord's prophets left, but Baal has 450 prophets. Get 2 bulls for us. Let Baal's prophets choose one for themselves, and let them cut it into pieces and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. I will prepare the other bull and put it on the wood, but not set fire to it. The terms are simple: 2 altars, 2 sacrifices. Then, he says, his voice rising, you call on the name of your God, and I will call on the name of the Lord. The God who answers by fire, he is God. This is brilliant. Baal is the god of the sky, the god of storms, the god who supposedly wields lightning. Elijah is challenging Baal to do the very thing he is famous for. And fire is the ultimate symbol of divine presence and power. It's a test that is dramatic, visual, and decisive. There can be no ambiguity. Then all the people said, "What you say is good." For the first time they speak. They agree to the terms. They want to see this. Elijah turns to the prophets of Baal. You go first, he says, since there are so many of you. Choose your bull and prepare it, and call on the name of your God, but do not light the fire. The prophets of Baal, full of confidence, set to their work. They select the finer of the 2 bulls. They build their altar. They butcher the animal, arranging the pieces just so on the pyre of wood. Everything is ready. And then the invocation begins. It starts in the morning. A chorus of 450 voices rings out over Mount Carmel. O Baal, answer us. Imagine the sound echoing across the mountain. A deep, resonant chant. At first, it's orderly, liturgical. They likely begin a slow, ceremonial dance around the altar. They are professionals. This is what they do. They perform the rites. They call on their God. The sun begins to climb higher in the cloudless sky. An hour passes. Then 2. The chanting continues. O Baal, answer us. But there is no response. No flash of lightning. No rumble of thunder. No voice. Nothing. The sun reaches its zenith. It is noon, the hottest part of the day. The prophets are sweating in their robes. Their chanting is becoming less a confident invocation and more a desperate plea. Their dancing is becoming more frantic. And now Elijah, who has been watching silently, decides it's time to add a little fuel to the fire, so to speak. He begins to mock them. His words are dripping with sarcasm, a masterful piece of theological heckling. Shout louder, he says, a twinkle in his eye. Surely he is a god. Perhaps he is deep in thought, or busy, or traveling. The King James Version has a more earthy translation for busy. He is pursuing, or he is relieving himself. Elijah is suggesting that their great god of the storm might be in the bathroom. He continues his taunts, his voice carrying to the watching crowd who must be stifling laughter. Maybe he is sleeping and must be awakened. The mockery hits its mark. The prophets of Baal are enraged and humiliated. Their professional pride is on the line. They have to get a response. So they double down. Their dancing becomes a wild, frenzied, limping frenzy. Their shouts become shrieks. And then, in their desperation, they resort to a gruesome practice. They shouted louder and slashed themselves with swords and spears, as was their custom, until their blood flowed. Picture the grotesque scene. These men, in a religious ecstasy of panic, are gashing their own bodies. Blood mixes with sweat, dripping onto the hot stones around the altar. They believe that by self-mutilation, they can get their God's attention, perhaps arouse his pity or stir him to action. It's a grim, bloody, and ultimately pathetic display. For hours this continues. All afternoon, under the relentless sun, they rave and prophesy and bleed. The time of the evening sacrifice approaches, the time when the temple in Jerusalem would have been offering its daily prayer. It has been the better part of a day, and the final verdict on their efforts is stark and absolute. But there was no response. No one answered. No one paid attention. Their God is silent. Their stage is empty. Their power is a sham. Exhausted, bleeding, and utterly defeated, they fall silent. An eerie quiet descends on the mountaintop, broken only by the wind. Now it is Elijah's turn. The contrast in his approach is stunning. Where they were chaotic, he is calm. Where they were frantic, he is deliberate. Where they were loud, he is filled with a quiet authority. He turns to the people, who have been watching this pathetic display all day. "Come here to me," he says. They draw near, their curiosity now mixed with a palpable tension. What will this man do? He doesn't build a new altar. Instead, he finds the ruins of an altar to the Lord that had been torn down, likely during Jezebel's purges. He begins to repair it. This is a deeply symbolic act. He is not just building a place for a sacrifice. He is restoring something that was broken. He is rebuilding the nation's connection to its God. He takes 12 stones, one for each of the tribes descended from Jacob, to whom the word of the Lord had come, saying, "Your name shall be Israel." Even in this moment of division, he reminds them of their unified past and their true identity. He is calling the fractured nation back together. With these 12 stones, he carefully rebuilds the altar in the name of the Lord. Then he does something else. He digs a trench around the altar, a trench large enough to hold about 2 seahs of seed, or 15 liters. A moat around his place of sacrifice. He arranges the wood on the stones. He cuts the second bull into pieces and lays it on the wood. Everything is ready. The scene is almost identical to the one the prophets of Baal prepared. But Elijah is not finished. He is about to make his demonstration so undeniable, so outrageously impossible, that no one could ever claim it was a trick. He turns to the people. "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour it on the offering and on the wood." You have to imagine the gasp that went through the crowd. Water, the most precious commodity in the entire kingdom. They are in the 3rd year of a catastrophic drought. People are dying of thirst, and he wants to pour it on a fire that he intends to light with a prayer. It's madness. It's a staggering waste, But they obey. They find the water perhaps brought up the mountain for drinking, and they bring the 4 large jars. They pour it out. The water soaks the meat, the wood, and the stones, running down into the dirt. Elijah is not satisfied. "Do it again," he commands. They do it again. 4 more jars. The wood is now completely saturated. The offering is dripping. He is still not satisfied. "Do it a 3rd time," he says. They obey. 4 more jars of precious water are poured out. 12 jars in total. The water has drenched everything. It runs off the altar and completely fills the trench he had dug around it. The entire setup is a soggy, waterlogged mess. He has made a humanly impossible task into a supernaturally impossible one. There is now no way, by any natural means, that this pyre will light. He has intentionally waterlogged the evidence to make the miracle pure. Everything is still. The sun is beginning to sink toward the Mediterranean. The time of the evening sacrifice has come. The crowd holds its breath. Elijah steps forward. He does not shout. He does not dance. He does not cut himself. He simply prays. He lifts his face to the silent, empty sky and speaks to the God he knows is listening. His prayer is a masterpiece of purpose and humility. It is short, direct, and powerful. "Lord, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel," he begins, connecting himself and the people back to their patriarchal roots, back to the covenant. "Let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant, and have done all these things at your command." This isn't about me, he's saying. This is about you. "Answer me, Lord, answer me," he pleads, his voice filled with passion. And then he gives the reason. "So these people will know that you, Lord, are God, and that you are turning their hearts back again." His prayer has 2 goals: that God would be glorified, and that the people would be restored. It is selfless, focused, and full of faith. He finishes his prayer, and in the silent pause that follows, it happens. The Bible says, "Then the fire of the Lord fell." It doesn't describe a lightning strike. It describes a column of fire descending from the clear sky. A supernatural, targeted inferno. It comes with a mighty whoosh, a sound of incinerating power, and it consumes everything. It consumes the bull, the sacrifice vaporizing in an instant. It consumes the wood, even though it was soaking wet. It consumes the 12 stones of the altar itself, turning solid rock into ash. It consumes the very soil and dust beneath the altar. And then, with a final hissing roar, it licks up every last drop of the water that was in the trench. One moment, there was a waterlogged altar. The next, there is nothing but a blackened, smoking crater in the ground. It is a display of power so absolute, so precise, and so terrifyingly complete that it obliterates every shred of doubt. For a long moment, there is stunned silence. The people are frozen, their minds struggling to process what their eyes have just seen. The heat from the fire washes over their faces. The smell of ozone and burnt stone fills the air. And then, as one, the spell is broken. The people fall to the ground, prostrate, their faces pressed into the dirt. The limping is over. The hesitation is gone. The verdict is in. A great cry rises from the thousands of people gathered on the mountain, a spontaneous, unified roar of terrified, ecstatic faith. The Lord, He is God. The Lord, He is God. Over and over they cry it, their voices filled with awe and fear, and a terrible, cleansing relief. They have seen. They know. The debate is settled, not with words, but with fire from heaven. Another mic drop that echoes from a mountaintop. The story doesn't end there, of course. In the wake of this undeniable demonstration, Elijah gives a harsh command to seize the prophets of Baal, the ones who had led the nation astray and murdered God's true prophets. It was a swift and terrible judgment, a cleansing of the cancer that had been killing the nation from within. And then, with the false religion purged, Elijah turns his attention back to the problem that started it all. He goes to Ahab, who has been a stunned spectator to this whole event, and says, "Go, eat, and drink, for there is the sound of a heavy rain." The sound isn't audible yet. It's a sound heard only by faith. While Ahab goes off to break his fast, Elijah climbs to the very top of Carmel, away from the crowds. He crouches down to the ground, puts his face between his knees in a posture of intense, humble prayer, and sends his servant to go look toward the sea. The servant goes, looks, and comes back. "There is nothing," he says. Elijah doesn't stop. "Go back," he says. 7 times. 7 times he sends his servant to look. 7 times the answer is the same. Nothing. Elijah's faith is persistent. The God who answers with fire in an instant sometimes builds the answer to a different prayer slowly. On the 7th trip, the servant returns, and his report is different. A cloud as small as a man's hand is rising from the sea. That's all it takes. That tiny, insignificant sign. "Go and tell Ahab," Elijah commands. "Hitch up your chariot and go down before the rain stops you." Suddenly, the sky that had been clear and brassy for 3.5 years begins to change. The wind picks up. The sky grows black with thick clouds, and then the heavens open. A torrential downpour begins, soaking the thirsty land. The drought is broken. The God who proved his power with fire now shows his mercy with water. And in a final, bizarre display of God's power, Elijah, filled with the Spirit of the Lord, tucks his cloak into his belt and outruns King Ahab's chariot all the way back to the city of Jezreel, a journey of some 20 miles. The wild man of God, empowered by the Creator, is faster than the king's horses. It's a fittingly strange and wonderful end to a day of impossible things. A day when God didn't just answer a prayer, but put an entire pantheon on notice and turned the hearts of his people back home. Let that feeling settle in you. The feeling of certainty after a long period of doubt. The relief of a long-awaited rain. It's a story of great contrasts, the noise of the prophets versus the quiet prayer of Elijah, the desperation of magic versus the confidence of faith, and the terrible fire from heaven followed by the gentle, life-giving rain. It's a reminder that sometimes the fog of confusion is burned away in a single, brilliant moment of clarity. There's something about fire, isn't there? On Mount Carmel, we saw it come down from heaven as a sign of absolute proof, a consuming fire that settled a national argument once and for all. It was a fire of revelation. But fire can also be a weapon. It can be a tool of rage and control, a threat used by humanity to enforce its will. Our next story is about that kind of fire, a fire stoked not by God, but by the hot breath of a furious king. And it's about 3 men who were told to bow before the power of an empire, or be consumed by its anger. We have to travel forward in time again, a few hundred years from Elijah's day. The world has changed. The northern kingdom of Israel, where Elijah lived, has long since been conquered and scattered. Now, the southern kingdom of Judah has also fallen. The magnificent temple in Jerusalem has been torn down, and the people of God are no longer in their own land. They are exiles, captives living in the heart of the world's new superpower, the mighty Babylonian Empire. Their new home is a land of overwhelming spectacle. The city of Babylon was designed to intimidate, to scream power and wealth at every turn. Imagine a city where the main gates, the famous Ishtar Gate, are covered in brilliant blue-glazed bricks, adorned with menacing golden dragons and bulls. A city with walls so thick that chariots could race on top of them. A city of towering ziggurats, massive stepped pyramids that seemed to scratch the sky, all dedicated to a pantheon of strange and powerful gods. At the center of it all is the emperor, Nebuchadnezzar, a man of immense power, ambition, and a famously volatile temper. He is the master of the known world, and into this glittering, pagan metropolis, a group of young Judean nobles have been brought. They were chosen for their intelligence, their good looks, and their noble birth. The plan was simple: re-educate them, assimilate them, turn them into loyal Babylonian civil servants, erase their past, and give them a new future in service to the empire. Among these young men are 4 friends we know from the book of Daniel, Daniel himself, and his 3 companions, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. One of the first things the Babylonians did was change their names. This was more than just giving them new name tags. It was a form of psychological warfare. A name connects you to your family, your heritage, your God. A new name tries to sever those connections. Hananiah, whose name meant the Lord is gracious, was renamed Shadrach, a name which likely points to a Babylonian moon god. Mishael, whose name was a defiant question, who is what God is, was renamed Meshach. And Azariah, meaning the Lord has helped, was renamed Abednego, which means servant of Nebo, the Babylonian god of wisdom. Their very identities were being rewritten to fit into this new world. But despite the pressure, these young men excelled. They were intelligent, disciplined, and hardworking. They learned the language and literature of Babylon, but privately held fast to their own laws and their own God, famously refusing the king's rich food and wine to keep themselves ritually pure. And God blessed them. They rose through the ranks of the complex Babylonian bureaucracy, gaining favor with the king and being appointed to high positions of authority. They were a stunning success story. Exiles who became influential administrators in the most powerful empire on earth. But their success put them in the spotlight, and the spotlight in a place like Babylon can be a dangerous place to be. The trouble begins, as it so often does, with ego. King Nebuchadnezzar, in a fit of supreme arrogance, decides to build a monument to his own magnificent power. But this isn't just a statue, it's a statement. On the flat plain of Dura, a province of Babylon, he erects an immense golden image. The scripture tells us its dimensions: 90 feet high and 9 feet wide. That's as tall as a 9-story building. Imagine it, shimmering under the hot Babylonian sun, a blinding column of gold dominating the landscape for miles around. It was a spectacle of vanity, a testament to his own perceived greatness. But it wasn't enough to just build it. He needed it to be worshipped. So he plans a grand dedication ceremony, and he sends out a decree to every corner of his vast empire. Every important official must attend. The list is long and impressive. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, the advisors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the provincial officials. Essentially, if you were anybody in the Babylonian government, you had to be there. The decree was simple and absolute. A grand orchestra was assembled: horns, pipes, lyres, zithers, harps, and all sorts of musical instruments. When the orchestra began to play, at that very moment, everyone, everywhere, was commanded to do one thing: fall down and worship the golden image of the king. And the decree came with a penalty clause, one designed to eliminate any thought of disobedience. Whoever does not fall down and worship, the decree stated, will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace. This wasn't just a religious ceremony. It was a political loyalty test. The statue likely represented the unity and divinity of the empire itself, embodied in the king. To refuse to bow wasn't just heresy, it was treason. It was a public declaration that you did not submit to the authority of Nebuchadnezzar. And the punishment was one of the most terrifying deaths imaginable: to be burned alive. For most of the officials gathered on the plain of Dura that day, this was no problem. They were polytheists. What's one more god in the pantheon? Bowing was a political necessity, a simple act of self-preservation. But for 3 men in the crowd, it was an impossible command. Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, or Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, as the world now knew them, were standing there, dressed in their official Babylonian robes. They knew the law of their God, the first and second commandments. You shall have no other gods before me. You shall not make for yourself an image in the form of anything in heaven above, or on the earth beneath, or in the waters below. You shall not bow down to them or worship them. The command of the king was in direct, non-negotiable conflict with the command of their God. There was no middle ground, no way to compromise, no way to reinterpret the rules. They had to make a choice. Let's try to imagine the conversations they must have had in the days leading up to this. They would have seen the colossal statue being constructed. They would have heard the decree being read. They were not caught by surprise. Picture them meeting in private, perhaps in one of their homes in the heart of Babylon. The day is coming, Hananiah might have said, his face grim. The music will play. What will we do? Azariah, ever the one whose name meant, "The Lord has helped," might have placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. We will do what we have always done. We will trust the Lord. Did he not deliver us from the king's rich food? Did he not give us knowledge and wisdom greater than all the king's magicians? But this is different, Miss Hale might have argued, packing the room. This isn't about diet. This is about worship. This is about bowing. The punishment is the furnace. They say the heat is so great you can feel it from 100 paces away. To refuse is to die, Azariah, and to bow is to die a different kind of death, isn't it, my friend? Azariah would reply quietly. To bow would be to kill the truth within us. It would be to say that the God of Israel is just one God among many, that he is no more powerful than this dumb idol of gold. It would be to deny everything our fathers taught us, everything that makes us who we are. We are Judeans. We are servants of Yahweh. We cannot bow. Their decision was forged in the quiet crucible of their friendship, and their shared faith long before the music ever began to play. They knew the cost. They had counted it. They would stand. And so the day of the dedication arrives. The plain of Dura is a sea of people. The air is thick with anticipation. The golden statue looms over them, a monstrous, glittering idol. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are there, standing in their designated places among the other officials. They are calm, resolved. Then the sound. A great blast from the horns, a flourish from the pipes, the shimmering cascade of 1,000 strings on the lyres and harps. The grand imperial anthem begins to play, and as one, the entire crowd falls. Satraps, governors, judges, a wave of humanity prostrates itself on the ground. A field of colorfully robed officials, all bowing their faces to the dust before the golden image. All except three. 3 figures remain standing, erect, motionless. 3 small points of defiance in a sea of submission. They must have been terrifyingly conspicuous. Every head is bowed, but theirs are not. In that moment, their quiet stand is as loud as a scream. They do not go unnoticed. There were certain men, astrologers the text says, but it means the Chaldean officials, the native Babylonian wise men. These men were likely simmering with professional jealousy. These 3 Jewish exiles had been promoted over them. They were foreigners who held positions of power. The Chaldeans see their chance to get rid of the competition. They rush to the king. Their approach is slick with flattery and venom. "O king, live forever," they begin, bowing low. You issued a decree, O mighty king, that when the music plays, everyone must bow to the golden image, and that whoever refuses will be thrown into a blazing furnace. Well, and here their voices drop into a conspiratorial tone. There are some Jews whom you have set over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your majesty. They neither serve your gods, nor worship the image of gold you have set up. They frame it perfectly. This isn't a religious disagreement. This is insubordination. These men pay no attention to you. They are defying the king's personal authority. The tactic works. Nebuchadnezzar explodes. The Bible says he was furious with rage. His face, which was probably beaming with pride a moment before, contorts into a mask of fury. How dare they? How dare anyone defy his absolute decree in such a public way? It's a personal insult to his power and his godhood. Summon them, he roars. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego are arrested and dragged before the furious king. They are brought into the royal tent or palace, the air thick with the king's anger. He glares at them, his eyes blazing. But even in his rage, he seems to have a flicker of disbelief. Or perhaps he remembers how useful these men have been to him. He gives them one more chance. Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego? He asks, his voice dangerously low, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold I have set up. He lays out the offer one last time. Now, when you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, if you are ready to fall down and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a blazing furnace. And then he asks the question that frames the entire conflict. He leans in, his voice a sneer of contemptuous power. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand? It is a direct challenge. My furnace versus your God. Let's see who is stronger. The three friends stand before the most powerful man on earth, who holds the power of their life and a horrific death in his hands. They do not have their friend Daniel with them this time. He is elsewhere, for reasons the Bible doesn't state. They are on their own, and their response is one of the most remarkable statements of faith in all of Scripture. They don't tremble, they don't beg, they don't even seem worried. Their reply is calm, respectful, but unshakable. Azariah, or perhaps Hananiah, likely speaks for the three of them. O Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. What an opening line. We don't even need to argue. Our minds are made up. The case is closed. Their quiet confidence must have stunned the king. They continue. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your majesty's hand. This is a bold declaration of faith. They state, as a matter of fact, that their God has the power to save them. He is able. He can rescue them from the fire and from the king. It's a direct answer to Nebuchadnezzar's challenge. What God will be able to rescue you? Their answer, ours can. But it is their next statement that elevates this from a story of bravado to a story of profound faith. It is the mic drop moment within the mic drop moment. But even if he does not, they say, their voice is steady. We want you to know, Your Majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up. Read that again. But even if he does not, even if God, in his sovereign wisdom, chooses not to save us, even if the furnace is our end, even if we burn, our decision does not change. Our allegiance is not conditional on our rescue. We worship him because of who he is, not because of what he does for us. Our faithfulness is not a transaction. We will not bow. This is the heart of the matter. They have separated the outcome from the obedience. They have placed their trust not in a guaranteed miracle, but in the unwavering goodness and worthiness of their God, whether they live or die. They are free. They have already conquered the fear of death, so the king's threat is powerless against them. Nebuchadnezzar is dumbfounded, and then his astonishment curdles back into pure, apoplectic rage. He is so furious that the Bible says his attitude toward them changed. The mask of civility is gone. He is no longer a king dealing with insubordinate officials. He is a tyrant whose absolute power has been defied by faith. Heat the furnace 7 times hotter than usual, he bellows. 7 is a number of perfection or completion. He is ordering the furnace to be made as hot as it can possibly be. The furnace attendants frantically stoke the flames, throwing in more fuel. The fire roars like a captured beast. The opening glows with a white-hot intensity, a shimmering wave of heat distorting the air around it. It becomes so lethally hot that it's a danger even to be near it. Tie them up, the king commands. The strongest soldiers in his army come forward. They seize Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and bind them tightly with ropes. And the Bible makes a special point of noting that they were tied up in their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes. They are fully dressed in their formal administrative attire. This detail will be important later. The soldiers drag the 3 bound men toward the mouth of the furnace. But the heat is so intense, so far beyond its normal temperature, that the flames leap out. The mighty soldiers, the pride of Nebuchadnezzar's army, are incinerated on the spot. They are killed just by getting close enough to do their job. And the 3 friends, bound and helpless, are hurled into the heart of the blazing inferno. From the outside, it is a swift and brutal execution, a terrifying example of what happens when you defy the king. Nebuchadnezzar watches, his face still flush with anger, expecting to see 3 figures instantly consumed by the flames. But what he sees makes him stop. It makes him lean forward, his eyes wide with disbelief. He sees something impossible. He leaps to his feet. "Advisors," he cries out, his voice no longer angry, but filled with a new emotion, astonishment, and perhaps fear. "Didn't we tie up 3 men and throw them into the fire?" His advisors, who are also starring, mouths agape, Reply, "Certainly, your majesty." "Look," Nebuchadnezzar shouts, pointing a trembling finger at the glowing maw of the furnace. "I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed." Let's go inside the furnace for a moment. Imagine the experience. One moment, you are falling through a roar of flame, expecting an instant of unimaginable agony. The next, you are standing. The ropes that bound your hands and feet are gone, burned away in an instant. But the fire doesn't touch you. It is all around you, a wall of white-hot, roaring energy, but it has no heat. It's like being inside the sun, but feeling only a gentle warmth. You are not just alive, you are comfortable. You are not cowering in a corner, you are walking around. You are free, and you are not alone. There, in the midst of the fire, is a 4th figure. The Bible says Nebuchadnezzar described him as looking like a son of the gods, or as some translations put it, a son of God. A being of light and glory is there with them, an angel of the Lord. Some theologians believe it was a pre-incarnate appearance of Christ himself. Whoever he was, his presence turned that furnace of execution into a sanctuary. The fire that was meant to destroy them became the very thing that set them free from their bonds. The place of their death became the place of divine fellowship. One can only imagine their awe, their joy, their worship, as they walked freely in the heart of the fire with their divine protector. Outside, Nebuchadnezzar is losing his mind. He has seen the impossible. He, the great king, the master of the world, has been utterly defeated. His ultimate weapon, his blazing furnace, has been rendered powerless. And his challenge, "What God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" has been answered in the most dramatic way imaginable. Humbled and terrified, he approaches the opening of the furnace. The fire is still raging, but the king doesn't seem to care. He has seen a power greater than his own. His tone is no longer one of command, but of supplication. "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego," he calls out, his voice trembling. And listen to the new title he gives them. "Servants of the Most High God, come out. Come here." He has met their God. He acknowledges him now as the Most High God, a title of supreme power. And they walk out. Out of the heart of the raging fire, they emerge, calm and serene. The fire, which had killed the soldiers who threw them in, lets them pass without resistance. A crowd immediately gathers. The satraps, prefects, governors, and royal advisors, the same people who had bowed to the statue, now press in close to see this miracle. They are the official witnesses. They examine the 3 men, and the proof of the miracle is in the details. First, their bodies are completely unharmed. Not a single burn. Second, not a hair of their heads was singed. The fire was so precise in its refusal to harm them that it didn't even touch a single hair. Third, their clothes were not scorched. Their robes, their trousers, their turbans, the very Babylonian garments they wore into the fire, are pristine. And finally, the last incredible detail. And there was no smell of fire on them. Anyone who has ever been near a campfire knows that the smell of smoke clings to you. But these men, who stood and walked in the heart of a superheated furnace, came out without even a trace of its scent. It wasn't just that they survived the fire. It was as if the fire had no jurisdiction over them, no power to affect them in any way. They were in a separate, protected reality, right in the middle of the flames. It is another stunning, undeniable mic drop. Nebuchadnezzar is overwhelmed. He erupts, not in rage this time, but in praise. Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, he declares to his entire court. He has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than serve or worship any god except their own God. He understands completely. He saw their trust, their defiance, their willingness to die, and he saw their God's response. And then, being Nebuchadnezzar, a man of extremes, he issues another decree, a complete 180 from his first one. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, and their houses be turned into piles of rubble, he proclaims, with his typical violent flair, for no other God can save in this way. In one afternoon, he has gone from demanding worship for his golden idol under penalty of death to demanding reverence for the God of Israel under penalty of death. And the story ends with a final note of vindication. Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. Their faithfulness, which should have led to their fiery demise, instead led to their promotion and the glory of their God throughout the most powerful empire on earth. They chose God over the king, and in the end, they were honored by both. It's a quiet story, in a way, despite the roaring fire. The loudest moments are the silences, the silence of the three men standing when everyone else bowed, and the quiet, firm confidence of their answer to the king. But even if he does not, those 5 words are a sermon in themselves. They teach us that faith isn't a magic formula to get us out of trouble. It's the anchor that holds us steady in the trouble. It's the deep, settled peace of knowing that our God is worthy of our trust, no matter what flames we may be facing. And that sometimes the greatest miracles happen when we're willing to walk into the fire, confident that even if we're not rescued from it, we will be met in it. We have stood on the shore of a sea that split in two, on a mountaintop that called down fire, and at the mouth of a furnace that refused to burn. These were moments when God's power intervened in the world, working through his prophets and for his people. They were thunderous answers to prayer, dramatic rescues from impossible situations. But now our story shifts. The curtain between heaven and earth is about to get even thinner, so thin that it disappears altogether. Because now, we're not just talking about God's power acting from a distance. We're going to talk about a time when the creator of the wind and the waves was sitting in a small wooden boat with his friends, about to get caught in a storm. Let's travel now to the shores of a lake. In Hebrew, it's the Kinneret, because it's shaped like a harp. We know it better by its Roman name, the Sea of Galilee. It's not a sea in the way we think of an ocean. It's a vast, freshwater lake, the heart of the bustling region of Galilee. On a good day, it is one of the most beautiful places on earth. The water is a brilliant blue, reflecting the sky. The surrounding hills are green and fertile, dotted with fishing villages and towns. The air is warm, and the lake provides life and livelihood for thousands of people. It's a place of beauty and commerce, of fishermen casting their nets and boats, carrying goods from one side to the other. But the Sea of Galilee has a secret. It has a temper. It lies in a deep depression, part of the Great Rift Valley, nearly 700 feet below sea level, and it's surrounded by steep hills and gorges. This unique geography makes it a natural wind tunnel. Without warning, cool air from the western hills or the northern mountains can rush down the steep slopes and collide with the warm, moist air over the lake. When this happens, a peaceful, glassy surface can transform into a raging cauldron of chaos in a matter of minutes. These storms are legendary for their suddenness and their violence, capable of swamping even the most sturdy fishing boat and terrifying the most seasoned sailor. Our story begins at the end of a long, exhausting day. Jesus has been teaching by the lakeside. All day long, a massive crowd has been pressing in on him. So many people that he had to get into a boat and push out a little from the shore, using the water as a natural amphitheater so his voice could carry across to the thousands who lined the beach. He has been teaching them in parables, these wonderful, cryptic stories that reveal the secrets of the kingdom of God to those with ears to hear. He's told them about a sower scattering seed on different kinds of soil, about a lamp that shouldn't be hidden under a bowl, about a tiny mustard seed that grows into a great tree. Imagine the mental and emotional energy that takes, pouring himself out hour after hour under the Galilean sun. He is fully God, yes, but he is also fully human, and his human body gets tired. His voice grows hoarse. He needs rest. As evening falls and the crowds finally begin to disperse, he turns to his disciples, his inner circle of followers. His instructions are simple. Let us go over to the other side. The other side of the lake was less populated, a quieter region. It was a chance to escape, to find some solitude, to rest and recharge. The disciples obey immediately. They ready the boat, a typical Galilean fishing boat, probably about 25 feet long, with a single mast for a sail and benches for rowers. The Gospel of Mark adds a lovely little detail. They took him along, just as he was, in the boat. There was no time to prepare, no time for him to go rest first. He was already in the boat from which he had been teaching, and from there, they set off. They didn't even go alone, the Bible says. There were also other boats with him. A small flotilla setting out in the calm of the evening. Picture the scene. The sun is setting, painting the western sky in hues of orange and purple. The light is soft and golden on the water. A gentle breeze fills the small sail. The only sounds are the rhythmic lapping of the waves against the wooden hull, the creak of the mast, and the quiet quiet conversation of the disciples as they guide the boat eastward. It is a scene of perfect peace, a welcome respite after the clamor of the crowds. And Jesus, utterly spent, finds a place in the stern, the back of the boat, where the steering oar is. Mark, who likely got his account directly from Peter, gives us another intimate detail. He was sleeping on a cushion. There was a leather or cloth cushion there for the helmsman, and Jesus lays his head down on it and falls into a deep, exhausted sleep. Think about the profound mystery of that. The Word of God, through whom the universe was made, the one who holds all things together, is so completely human, so utterly drained, that he sleeps. His sleep is a testament to his humanity, and it's a sleep of perfect trust. He is not worried about the journey. He is not anxious about tomorrow. He is resting securely and peacefully in his Father's care. His disciples, on the other hand, are very much awake. Many of them were fishermen by trade. Peter and his brother Andrew, James and his brother John, they had grown up on this lake. This was their office. They knew its rhythms, its currents, its moods. They could read the sky and smell the air and know what the water was about to do. They were experts, and their expertise was about to be rendered completely meaningless. It comes without warning. A furious squall, Mark calls it. Matthew uses the Greek word seismos, the same word for an earthquake, a great shaking of the sea. Luke says a laelapse, a whirlwind or hurricane, came down on the lake. This wasn't just a strong wind, this was a violent, elemental assault. Imagine the sudden shift. The gentle evening breeze becomes a shrieking, howling gale that tears down from the surrounding hills. The sky, a moment ago painted with the soft colors of sunset, turns a bruised, menacing black. The placid surface of the lake erupts. The waves don't just get choppy, they become monstrous, churning mountains of black water. From inside the boat, it would have been sheer terror. The little fishing vessel is caught in the cross currents, tossed about like a child's toy. One moment, it's lifted to the crest of a terrifying wave, hanging there for a sickening second, with a view of nothing but raging water all around. The next, it's plunging down into a deep trough, the waves towering over the mast, threatening to swallow them whole. The disciples spring into action, their fishermen's instincts taking over. They would have frantically tried to lower the sail before the wind shredded it or capsized them. They would have grabbed the oars, trying to keep the boat's nose pointed into the waves to keep from being swamped. But it's no use. The storm is too powerful. The waves are crashing over the boat so that it was nearly swamped. Icy, dark water is pouring over the sides, filling the boat. They are bailing frantically, but more water is coming in than they can possibly throw out. The boat is getting heavier, sitting lower in the water, becoming less responsive. They are losing the fight, and these are not landlubbers panicking at the first sign of rough water. These are seasoned, hardened fishermen. This is their worst nightmare. This is the kind of storm that kills professionals. This is the storm they tell stories about, the one that takes boats and men and leaves no trace. Their expertise has failed them. Their strength is useless. They know, with a cold, sickening certainty, that they are going to die. The boat is going down, and they are going to drown in the cold, black heart of the Sea of Galilee. Their screams to each other are snatched away by the roar of the wind. And through all of this, Jesus is asleep. It's almost comical. It's certainly incredible. The boat is lurching violently, being filled with water. The wind is howling. His friends are screaming in terror, and he sleeps on. His peace is so profound, so absolute, that the chaos of creation cannot touch it. Finally, in their last extremity of terror, when they have given up all hope of saving themselves, they remember who is with them. They stumble and crawl their way to the stern of the swamped, lurching boat, and they wake him up. Their cry is a jumble of fear, desperation, and even a hint of angry accusation. Each gospel records their words slightly differently, but they all carry the same panicked tone. Teacher, don't you care if we drown? That's the raw, honest cry from Mark's gospel. It's a question aimed at his heart. How can you be so detached? How can you sleep when we are dying? Lord, save us. We're going to drown. This is Matthew's version, a direct plea for rescue, born of pure terror. Master, Master, we're going to drown. Luke's account shows their repeated, frantic cries. Their faith is a strange, paradoxical thing in this moment. It's strong enough that in their final, desperate moment, they turn to him as their only hope. But it's weak enough that they think he might not care, that he could somehow sleep through their peril out of indifference. They believe he could help, but they are terrified that he won't. Jesus wakes up. There is no grogginess, no confusion. He takes in the scene, the shrieking wind, the raging waves, the water-filled boat, the terrified faces of his friends. And he is completely calm. He doesn't seem surprised or alarmed. First, he deals with the storm inside his disciples. He looks at their fear-whitened faces and asks a gentle, piercing question. Why are you so afraid? Do you still have no faith? In Matthew's account, he says, You of little faith, why are you so afraid? He addresses their fear and its root cause, their small faith, before he even glances at the storm. He is always more concerned with the state of our hearts than with the state of our circumstances. Then he stands up. In the middle of the rocking, pitching, water-filled boat, a place where it would be impossible to keep one's balance, he stands. He turns away from his disciples and faces the storm. He faces the wind and the waves as a king would face a rebellion. He doesn't lift his hands to the sky and pray a long, pleading prayer to his Father. He doesn't perform some elaborate ritual. He speaks. He speaks directly to the non-living elements of creation, as if they were living, sentient beings capable of hearing and obeying. He rebukes the wind, the same way you would rebuke a misbehaving child or an unruly dog. Then he speaks to the waves. And Mark's gospel gives us the very words, sharp and authoritative. Siopa, pephamoso. In English, it's translated as quiet, be still. But the Greek is so much stronger. The first word, siopa, is a command for silence. The second word, pephamoso, is a command to be muzzled. It's the same word used elsewhere for casting out a demon, telling it to be silent. It's a powerful, commanding, almost aggressive word. It's the kind of command you give to a snarling beast to force it into submission. Jesus isn't asking the storm to calm down. He is muzzling it. And the result is the most profound mic drop of them all. The wind doesn't just die down. It doesn't gradually subside. It stops. Instantly. One moment, a deafening, shrieking gale, the next, dead silence. The waves don't just get smaller. They don't slowly settle into a gentle swell. They become flat. Instantly, the Bible says, the wind died down and it was completely calm. A great calm. This is the part of the miracle that is truly impossible. Anyone who knows the sea knows that even after a great wind stops, the water remains agitated for hours. The massive energy put into the water creates a huge swell that takes a long, long time to dissipate. But here, the chaos becomes glass in a single heartbeat. The transition from total, violent chaos to absolute, unnatural stillness is instantaneous. The silence that follows is more deafening than the storm itself. The disciples stand frozen in the half-submerged boat. Water sloshes around their ankles. They are dripping wet and shivering. But they are no longer looking at the water. They are all staring at Jesus. And their fear, which had been at a fever pitch moments before, does not go away. It transforms. It deepens. It becomes something else entirely. The gospel says they were terrified. The Greek is emphatic. They feared a great fear. A moment ago, they were afraid of drowning. That's a normal fear. It's the fear of a creature in a life-threatening situation. But this new fear is different. This is a holy fear. It's a dread-filled, knee-weakening awe. This is the fear you feel when you suddenly realize you are in the presence of something utterly beyond your comprehension. It's the fear of the finite standing before the infinite. They are no longer afraid of the storm. Now, they are absolutely terrified of the man who just stopped it. In the eerie, unnatural calm, surrounded by the now placid water, they turn to each other. They don't shout. They whisper. Their voices are full of this new, terrifying awe. And they ask the most important question in all the Gospels. Who is this? Even the wind and the waves obey him. Look at how their perspective has shifted. They started with a frantic, accusatory question for Jesus. Don't you care? Now, they are asking a bewildered, terrified question about him. Who are you? They had seen him heal the sick. They had seen him cast out demons. They had heard him teach with an authority they had never heard before. But this is different. Prophets in their history had performed mighty miracles. Moses parted the sea, but he did it by raising his staff and praying to God. Elijah called down fire from heaven, but he prayed for it to happen. They were conduits of God's power. But Jesus didn't pray. He didn't ask God to calm the storm. He spoke to the storm himself with his own authority, and the storm obeyed him as its master. In that moment, in that little boat, the disciples begin to understand. The one sleeping in their stern, the one who gets tired and needs a cushion, is the same one whose voice the very fabric of creation recognizes and obeys. The Lord of the storm was in the storm with them all along. The power that spoke the universe into existence was taking a nap in their boat. Rest of the journey to the other side must have been the quietest trip they ever took. Imagine the slow work of bailing out the rest of the water, the disciples moving not with panic now, but with slow, deliberate, thoughtful motions. Imagine them constantly glancing over at the man in the stern, now awake and watching them, his eyes full of a peace that they were only just beginning to comprehend. The air was no longer filled with the roar of the storm, but with the heavy weight of a new and terrifying revelation. This story is about so much more than a weather event. It's about the two storms that were raging that night, one on the Sea of Galilee and a smaller, but just as fierce, one in the hearts of the disciples. And Jesus spoke peace to them both. He first quieted their fear with his question, and then he quieted the waves with his command. It's a beautiful, gentle picture for us, isn't it? A reminder that in the storms of our own lives, when it feels like the boat is sinking and the waves are overwhelming and we're screaming, "God, don't you care?" He is there. He may seem to be sleeping, but he is not absent. And he has the authority to speak a single word, "Peace, be still," and bring a great calm not just to our circumstances, but to our souls. The only question left for us, whispered in the quiet after the storm, is the same one the disciples asked. Who is this? We have been on a journey of power. We've seen God's power over water, fire, and wind. We saw his power defend the faithful and prove his sovereignty. We saw the creator of the storm calm it with a word. That story on the Sea of Galilee ended with the disciples asking the most important question. Who is this? They had seen his authority over creation. But there is one enemy more powerful than a storm, one furnace hotter than Nebuchadnezzar's, one sea deeper than the Red Sea. The final enemy, death itself. Our last story is about how Jesus faced that enemy. It is the quietest, and yet the most earth-shattering mic drop in human history. It is the story that provides the ultimate, breathtaking answer to the disciples' question. To understand the light of this story, we must first sit for a moment in the darkness that preceded it. The week that began with a triumphal entry into Jerusalem, with crowds waving palm branches and shouting, "Hosanna," had spiraled into a nightmare. The teacher who spoke with such authority, the healer who made the blind see and the lame walk, the man who even raised his friend Lazarus from the dead, had been arrested, betrayed by one of his own. He was subjected to a series of sham trials through the night, mocked, beaten, and condemned. The powers of the world, both the religious authority of the temple and the military authority of Rome, had conspired to silence him. And on a Friday morning, on a desolate hill outside the city walls called Golgotha, the place of the skull, they nailed him to a Roman cross. We will not dwell on the physical horror of that. It is too brutal for a quiet evening story. Let us focus instead on the deep, spiritual darkness of that afternoon. From noon until 3 o'clock, a profound, unnatural darkness covered the land, as if creation itself was groaning in agony at what humanity was doing to its maker. The jeering crowds fell silent. The man who had declared, "I am the light of the world," was now shrouded in blackness. From the cross, he spoke a few final, precious words. He offered forgiveness to his executioners. He promised paradise to a thief crucified beside him. He entrusted his mother to the care of his beloved disciple, John. And then, with a loud cry that was not the weak gasp of a defeated man, but the powerful shout of a victor, he said, "It is finished." He bowed his head, and he gave up his spirit. At that moment, in the temple in Jerusalem, the massive, thick curtain that separated the holy place from the most holy place, the symbolic dwelling of God on earth, tore in two, from top to bottom. The barrier between God and humanity was ripped apart. An earthquake shook the ground. A Roman centurion, a hardened professional soldier standing at the foot of the cross, saw all that had happened and was filled with a sudden, terrified awe. "Surely," he said, "this man was the Son of God." But for Jesus' followers, it was not a moment of revelation. It was a moment of utter and complete devastation. Their hope was dead. Their king was executed. Their world had ended. The one they believed would redeem Israel was hanging, lifeless, on a cross. Everything they had believed, everything they had given up their lives to follow for 3 years, had ended in the most shameful, public, and brutal way imaginable. As the sun began to set, marking the beginning of the Sabbath, a sense of urgency fell over the scene. According to Jewish law, a body could not be left on a cross during the holy day. 2 men, members of the Sanhedrin, the very council that had condemned Jesus, now showed their true colors. Joseph of Arimathea, a rich and respected man who was a secret disciple of Jesus, bravely went to the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, and asked for the body. Pilate, surprised that Jesus was already dead, gave his permission. Joseph was joined by another secret disciple, Nicodemus, the same Pharisee who had come to Jesus by night years before, asking questions about being born again. Together, these 2 men, who had too much to lose to follow Jesus openly in his life, now risk everything to care for him in his death. They take his broken body down from the cross. It is a tender, heartbreaking task. They carry him to a new tomb, one that Joseph owned, carved out of the rock in a nearby garden. It was a tomb where no one had ever been laid. There, in the fading light, they perform a hasty burial. They wrap the body of Jesus in long strips of clean linen cloth, and with them, an astonishing quantity of spices, a mixture of myrrh and aloes that Nicodemus had brought, weighing about 75 pounds. This was a king's burial, an act of profound love and devotion, but it was also an act of finality. Spices were used to anoint the dead, to cover the smell of decay. They were preparing a corpse for its final rest. They were not expecting a resurrection. They were performing a funeral. They lay his body in the cold darkness of the tomb. And then, with great effort, they roll a massive stone, a disc-shaped rock that would have taken several strong men to move, against the entrance, sealing it shut. A few women, including Mary Magdalene and another Mary, watched from a distance, their hearts shattered, seeing where he was laid. Then they too had to hurry home as the Sabbath began. The story should have ended there. Another charismatic leader, another failed movement, another dead Messiah. The authorities certainly thought so, but they were nervous. They remembered that Jesus had said something about rising again after 3 days, so they went to Pilate with a concern. "Sir," they said, "we remember that while he was still alive, that deceiver said, 'After 3 days I will rise again.' So give the order for the tomb to be made secure until the 3rd day. Otherwise, his disciples may come and steal the body and tell the people that he has been raised from the dead." Pilate, weary of the whole affair, dismissed them. "Take a guard," he said. "Go, make the tomb as secure as you know how." So they went. They placed a Roman seal on the stone. To break it was to defy the authority of the Roman Empire. And they posted a detachment of trained Roman soldiers to guard the tomb. Now pause and consider the scene. The body of Jesus is in a stone tomb. The entrance is blocked by a massive rock. The rock is sealed with the official seal of Rome, and the tomb is guarded by a squad of professional soldiers. It is the most secure prison imaginable. He is not just dead, he is locked away, sealed in by the combined power of religion and empire. There is no way out. And so began the longest day. Saturday, the Sabbath. For the disciples, it was a day of terror and suffocating grief. The Gospels are mostly silent about this day, but we can imagine the scene. They are hidden away, huddled together in a room in Jerusalem, the doors locked for fear of the authorities. The man who was their shield is gone. Surely, the men who killed him will come for them next. The air in that room must have been thick with despair. Every creak of the floorboards, every shout from the street outside would have sent a jolt of fear through them. And the grief, a crushing, bewildering grief. They would have replayed the last few days over and over. The Last Supper, his words about his body and blood, the prayer in the garden, the arrest, the trials, the crucifixion. None of it made sense. Imagine Peter, brash, bold Peter the rock. He is not a rock now, he is a puddle of shame. Just a few nights ago, he had sworn he would die for Jesus. And then, in the courtyard of the high priest, he had denied even knowing him 3 times, just as Jesus had predicted. The crow of a rooster had shattered his self-confidence. His grief is poisoned with a deep, bitter guilt. They would have talked in hushed, heartbroken whispers. What do we do now? Where do we go? Most of them had left everything to follow him, their fishing businesses, their homes, their families. It was all for nothing. It had all ended in failure and shame. They are not waiting with hopeful expectation for the 3rd day. They have forgotten his prophecies of resurrection, or perhaps never truly understood them. In their minds, the story is over. But while the men are paralyzed by fear, the women are propelled by love. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, Salome, Joanna, and others. Their love is practical. Their hearts are broken, but their hands are busy. After the Sabbath ended at sunset on Saturday, They went and bought more spices and perfumes. The burial had been done in a hurry. They wanted to give their Lord the honor of a proper anointing. Their plan is simple and heartbreakingly loving. At the first light of dawn on Sunday, the first day of the week, they will go to the tomb and finish the work of burial. Their only concern, which they discuss among themselves, is a practical one. Who will roll the stone away from the entrance of the tomb for us? And so, in the deep, pre-dawn darkness of Sunday morning, a small group of women makes their way through the quiet streets of Jerusalem and out toward the garden tomb. The air is cool and still. The sky in the east is just beginning to soften from black to a deep indigo. They carry their spices, their hearts heavy with their sad and loving task. As they get closer, they feel it, a tremor in the ground, and they see it, the first great shock. The massive stone is not in front of the tomb. It has been rolled away. The entrance gapes open like a dark mouth. They don't know that moments before there had been a violent earthquake. An angel of the Lord had descended from heaven, his appearance like a flash of lightning, his clothes as white as snow. He had rolled back the stone and was sitting on it. The trained Roman guards, these tough soldiers, had been so terrified by the sight that they shook and became like dead men. When they recovered, they fled, their bravado shattered. The women see only the result, an open tomb. Their first thought is not a miracle. Their first thought is a desecration. Someone has stolen the body. Panic sets in. Mary Magdalene, it seems, immediately turns and runs. She has to tell Peter and John. The other women, braver or perhaps just more stunned, cautiously approach the tomb. They stoop down and look inside, and they see something even more startling. The body of Jesus is gone, but the tomb is not empty. There, where the body had been laid, are two men in clothes that gleamed like lightning. Angels. The women are terrified. They bow down with their faces to the ground. But the angels speak, and their words are the first proclamation of the gospel. Why do you look for the living among the dead? They ask. It is a gentle, beautiful rebuke. You are in the wrong place. This is a tomb. Tombs are for the dead. He is not dead. He is not here, he has risen. Remember how he told you, while he was still with you in Galilee. The Son of Man must be delivered into the hands of sinful men, be crucified, and on the third day be raised again. And in that moment, the gospel says, they remembered his words. The fog of their grief begins to lift, pierced by a ray of impossible hope. The angels give them a command. Go quickly and tell his disciples. Meanwhile, Mary Magdalene, in a panic, has found Peter and John. They have taken the Lord out of the tomb, she says, gasping for breath. And we don't know where they have put him. Her words spur them to action. Peter and John immediately set off, running toward the tomb. John, being younger, outruns Peter. He gets there first, but he hesitates. He stoops down, looks in, and sees the strips of linen lying there, but he doesn't go inside. Then Peter arrives, and being Peter, he doesn't hesitate. He barges right into the tomb. He sees the linen wrappings, And then he sees something else, a small detail that changes everything. The Saudarian, the separate cloth that had been wrapped around Jesus' head, was not lying with the linen strips. It was folded up neatly by itself in a separate place. This is the clue. This is the detail that shouts resurrection, not robbery. A grave robber in a hurry would have either taken the valuable linen cloths or left them in a tangled mess. They certainly wouldn't have taken the time to carefully remove the headcloth, fold it, and set it aside. This speaks of order, of peace, of someone who was not in a hurry, someone who unwrapped himself and left his grave clothes behind like a butterfly leaving its chrysalis. John comes into the tomb then, sees the folded cloth, and the Bible says, he saw and believed. For him, that was all the proof he needed. Still bewildered, the two men then go back to their homes. But Mary Magdalene returns to the garden, and she stays. She stands outside the tomb, weeping. Her heart is broken. The others might have seen enough, but she cannot leave. In her grief, she stoops down to look into the tomb one more time. She sees the two angels in white, seated where Jesus' body had been, one at the head and the other at the foot. "Woman, why are you crying?" they ask her gently. "They have taken my Lord away," she sobs, "and I don't know where they have put him." At this, she turns around, perhaps hearing a sound behind her. She sees a man standing there. Through her blur of tears, she doesn't recognize him. She assumes he is the gardener. He asks her the same question as the angels. "Woman, why are you crying? Who is it you are looking for?" Thinking he is the gardener, and that he might have moved the body, she pleads with him. "Sir, if you have carried him away, tell me where you have put him, and I will get him." Her love is so great, she will carry the body herself if she has to. The man looks at her, and he says one word, her name. "Mary." He says it in the way that only he has ever said it. It's the voice of her shepherd. And in that single word, the universe shifts. The fog of her grief evaporates. The tears in her eyes clear. It is not the gardener. "Rabboni," she cries out, which means teacher. It is him. He is alive. She reaches for him, but he gives her a strange command. "Do not hold on to me, for I have not yet ascended to the Father." And then he gives her the greatest commission. "Go instead to my brothers and tell them, I am ascending to my Father and your Father, to my God and your God." And so Mary Magdalene, a woman, becomes the first apostle, the apostle to the apostles. She runs back to the disciples, but this time her message is different. It's no longer the panicked cry of, "They have taken the Lord." It is the ecstatic, joyful proclamation, "I have seen the Lord." She and the other women tell the disciples everything, but the men, locked in their room of grief and fear, do not believe. The Gospel of Luke says their words seemed to them like nonsense. Their skepticism is one of the strongest proofs for the truth of the resurrection. They were not a gullible crowd, ready to believe a fanciful story. They were broken men who had to be convinced against their own despair. That same afternoon, two of Jesus' lesser-known disciples are walking on the road to a village called Emmaus, about 7 miles from Jerusalem. They are leaving the city. They are giving up. As they walk, their heads are down, their conversation sad. A stranger joins them on the road. It is Jesus, but the Bible says they were kept from recognizing him. "What are you discussing so intently as you walk along?" he asks. They stop, their faces downcast. One of them, named Cleopas, answers, "Are you the only one visiting Jerusalem who does not know the things that have happened there in these last few days?" "What things?" Jesus asks, drawing their story out of them. And they pour out their broken hearts. They tell him all about Jesus of Nazareth. He was a prophet, powerful in word and deed before God and all the people, they say. They tell of his crucifixion, and then they say the most heartbreaking words. "But we had hoped that he was the one who was going to redeem Israel." We had hoped, past tense. Their hope is dead. They even mention the women's strange story from that morning about an empty tomb and angels, but they dismiss it. The stranger then gently rebukes them. "How foolish you are, and how slow to believe all that the prophets have spoken. Did not the Messiah have to suffer these things and then enter his glory?" And right there, on the road to Emmaus, Jesus gives them the greatest Bible study in history. Beginning with Moses and all the prophets, he explained to them what was said in all the scriptures concerning himself. As they approach their village, Jesus acts as if he is going farther, but they urge him, "Stay with us, for it is nearly evening." He goes in to have a meal with them, and as he sits at the table, he takes bread, gives thanks, breaks it, and begins to give it to them. And in that familiar action, the breaking of the bread, their eyes are opened. They recognize him, and he vanishes from their sight. They look at each other, stunned, their hearts pounding. "Were not our hearts burning within us," they say, "while he talked with us on the road and opened the scriptures to us?" Their despair is gone, replaced by a burning, joyful certainty. They don't even finish their meal. They get up at once and run the 7 miles back to Jerusalem in the dark. They find the 11 disciples and the others still in the locked room. The Emmaus too burst in with their incredible story, and they are greeted with more news. The Lord has appeared to Peter. And as they are all talking, discussing these incredible, impossible events, suddenly, Jesus himself is standing there among them. He did not come through the locked door. He is just there. Their reaction is not joy. It is terror. They think he is a ghost. "Peace be with you," he says, his voice calm. But they are startled and frightened. "Why are you troubled?" he asks. "And why do doubts rise in your minds?" He offers them proof, tangible proof. "Look at my hands and my feet. It is I myself. Touch me and see. A ghost does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have." He shows them the wounds, the nail prints in his hands and feet, the gash in his side. The marks of his death have become the evidence of his resurrection. He is not a spirit, he is risen bodily. And because they are still disbelieving for joy and wonder, he asks for something to eat. They give him a piece of broiled fish, and he eats it in their presence. The proof is undeniable. This is no ghost. This is their Lord alive. And in that room, their fear finally melts away, replaced by an overwhelming, unbelievable joy. But one of them, Thomas, was not there that night. When the others tell him, "We have seen the Lord," he refuses to believe. He needs more proof. His words are famous. "Unless I see the nail marks in his hands, and put my finger where the nails were, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." A week later, the disciples are in the house again, and this time Thomas is with them. The doors are locked, and again Jesus comes and stands among them. "Peace be with you," he says. Then he turns directly to Thomas. He looks him in the eye and addresses his doubt with love, not condemnation. "Put your finger here, see my hands. Reach out your hand and put it into my side. Stop doubting and believe." He offers Thomas the very proof he demanded. Thomas is shattered. He doesn't need to touch. Seeing is enough. He falls before Jesus and makes the greatest confession of faith in the entire Bible. "My Lord and my God." Jesus says to him, "Because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." A blessing for Thomas and for all of us who would come after. This, my friends, is the final mic drop. It is not loud like thunder or bright like fire from heaven. It is as quiet as a folded burial cloth in an empty tomb. It is a quiet, world-altering victory over sin, darkness, and the grave. It proves that Jesus is exactly who he said he was. His power is not just over the elements of nature, but over life and death itself. The resurrection turned a handful of terrified, grieving disciples into a courageous, world-changing force. It turned a symbol of Roman torture into a beacon of hope for all humanity. It is the event that gives meaning to every other story, every other promise, every other miracle. It is the hinge on which all of human history turns. It is the ultimate declaration that God's love is stronger than our sin, and his life is stronger than our death. It is the story that doesn't just end with peace, but with a new beginning, and the promise that because he lives, we too shall live.